Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and it is the weekend, so that means it is another episode of Corner Box Classics. This week, it is the books that I picked up from May 25th, 1982. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Corner Box Classics is a thing that I started long before I ever had a channel. So I started realizing that I had a lot of comics, obviously, like most of us. And I wanted to start reading. I started finishing off runs and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh man, I should really not wait until I retire, because who knows, with the state of things. So I might as well just start reading my comics now. This was a few years ago, kicked it off with Fantastic Four #1, moved it through there, pulled loads of stuff in, along the way. And so now I am in the final week of May 1982. So that's kind of where we're at. There were only, so this is basically like, I obviously now, and have been throughout my entire comic book reading life, pedal up to the shop to pick up my new books, as you can see on the Wednesday videos. And so this is sort of like if I had been collecting comics in May of 1982, what would I have pedaled up to the shop to pick up? Or the 7-Eleven, or the grocery store, or whatever. You get the idea. So, this would have been a light week. 3 books. And you're like, are we possibly going to get a BaseMint Comics video that's under 20 minutes? You're not. Because when I'm wrapped up with these 3 issues of Corner Box Classics, I went to a buddy of mine puts on a show once a month in the area, and so I went to that. Picked up a bunch of stuff, so I was going to show that stuff off at the end of it, because, I make the rules. So let's get into it. Corner Box Classics. First up, Daredevil number 186, Stilts, released May 25th, 1982. Written and penciled by Frank Miller, inked and colored by Klaus Janson, with letters by Joseph Rosen, and obviously that is a classic Miller and Janson cover. Last episode was Guts. It was the one all about Foggy kind of acting as though he was a different fella named Guts. He just wound up kind of haphazardly winding up in places that he didn't want to be, because he just, it was a good, fun issue. If it's 185, if you want to track it down, it's good. I'd love to be able to be like, it was in this episode of Corner Box Classics, but because it's done weekly 4 weeks ago? A month ago? I don't know. Time is a construct. So this opens up with kind of this monologue about, if you're a tourist and you look up, you might see Daredevil. And what you don't, maybe you do. Maybe if you're super familiar with the character, you know that that's him out of his costume. But what you quickly realize, and probably gathered from the title of this issue, and the great title, I love the title card of this. And I love Miller's, Miller is, again, I am not giving anybody any information on Frank Miller that they aren't already aware of. But holy smokes, does Miller and Jenson's Daredevil just read super cinematic. I love the Netflix Daredevil show. I enjoyed the Disney Plus season. But this run is cinematic enough for me, where, love having the show, but, man, so good. And that title card, come on. You know what we're getting. We're getting Stiltman. That's Stiltman looking up at him. Stiltman is just a great character. I was thrown off initially, because then it cuts over to Heather Glenn, kind of read the riot act to her father's company, but she's blonde, and I was like, come on, Janson. And then later on in the issue, it's Foggy mentions that she has dyed her hair blonde, because I was like, what happened here? So that sort of threw me off for a second, as she's basically explaining, that they're corrupt and she's not going to let them get away with this. And then all of a sudden, Daredevil, it's a little bit, this issue was the first time where I felt like there was some stuff in it that was a little bit disjointed. And I don't know, could have been, it's been a long week here. Henry had a hospital visit, which I'll get into at some other time. So it's been kind of a, I was reading these pretty late, and sometimes, the eyes get blurry, and it might be me. I don't necessarily want to fault the great Miller and Jansen here, but there were a couple times where I was like, wait. And this is one of those, because I guess Daredevil's just kind of hanging out in the window, listening to this go down, and then decides that he's going to, like, take down the company, I assume for Heather. And so then it's revealed that, like, on the other in the other window, there's Stiltman, and he's like, whoa, the deal was that I was going to mess up, like, Heather and the company, but if Daredevil's involved, I've had to fight that dude before, and my price is now doubled, which I thought was, like, a pretty solid move on Herman's, like, he was like, I'm not messing around, like, I've had to deal with this dude before. And I love this, he's, like, counting the money in the air. Well, he's all stilted up. Fantastic action figure, by the way. I have it, and if you watch the room tour, I have one that reaches the ceiling because I bought a bunch of. If you were like trying to find a hand ninja and you were a Marvel Legend Hasbro fan, good luck because I bought them all. I thought the money was going to drop out of the case, but he loses a glove, which was still funny, and then winds up, it's a solid move because then we have to go to Melvin Potter's costume shop, where Turk is, like, trying to get him to come back as Gladiator, and Melvin's like, nah, man, like, I'm just enjoying running this shop, like, it's good for my health, it's good for my sanity, I'm not getting punched in the face, I don't want to get involved. And so that's when Melvin comes, or not Melvin, Stiltman comes in, and he's trying to replace his glove. And when this panel right here, okay, I cannot think of the actor's real name, and I feel really bad because fantastic guy. But on Cheers, there was this fantastic, like, recurring character named Harry the Hat, and he was played by the guy who was the judge in Night Court. I record on my phone, so I can't look him up to figure out what his actual name is. But as much as I enjoyed Night Court as a kid, Harry the Hat from Cheers is who I associate with him. And it's like the glasses and the hat. Just, I'm like, if there was an 80s Daredevil movie, Harry the Hat would have been great. A Stiltman would have been perfect. So Turk is basically like, Turk kind of recognizes Stiltman, but he can't quite put his finger on it, which is like, Turk is like really good comedy in this whole run. Like, you feel bad, like, you're like, dude sucks, he's trying to work with the Kingpin, and I should not be rooting for this, like, thug dude to be running around, but I don't know, like, there's something endearing about Turk, kind of like, I don't know, out of all the bad guys in the book, he's like the least bad, and I feel kind of bad for him. It is what it is. So he thinks that he's Leapfrog, which I thought was hilarious. Another great, like, kind of weird, is he a villain or is he just a goofball? So he winds up getting the glove from Melvin, and then Turk decides to follow him. Then we cut back to Nelson and Murdoch's office, and, Foggy walks in, and there's a bunch of copies of Glenn Industries paperwork being copied and filed, and Matt seems like, hey, I've got, like, Foggy's like, what are you doing, like, going after Glenn Industries? And he's like, oh, we got negligence and fraud, connections to the manufacturers of explosives used in a recent robbery attempt, and that's just so far. We're going to nail Glenn Industries to the wall. And so, like, Matt's going, like, hardcore against Glenn Industries. And so Foggy kind of loses it, and he's sort of like, hey, man, we're defenders. Like, we're not prosecutors. Like, what is the deal here? Why are you doing this? And while that's going on, Matt starts getting a headache, and his powers start kind of going into overdrive, and everything is getting, like, louder and louder. And so that kind of sort of, like, just sort of stops that, conversation between Matt and Foggy. So then we cut over to Maxine Lavender's office, the district attorney. So he goes over and Daredevil swings by, brings the Glen Industries stuff over to her to kind of have her go after them. And then he splits. And then we cut back to Stiltman, who is looking over his armor and trying to figure out a new way to, boost its capabilities. That way it doesn't get messed with Daredevil. And he's just, like, happily, like, looking at his creation and thinking of, like, seems much more like a little, like, tinkerer, like a little inventor. And then he gets lead piped over the head by Turk. And so then it cuts to Kingpin's office, where Kingpin is, basically Kingpin's, like, lackeys or whatever, basically like, hey, Elektra's gone, Bullseye's gone, we need a new assassin, like, the natives are starting, like, you're like, lower ranking, there's mutiny in the works here if you don't get someone that kind of scares the bejesus out of everyone. And so that's when Turk as Stiltman appears, and he's like, I'm your man. And Kingpin is like, you're an idiot, and I don't employ idiots. And so he takes off. Kingpin takes off. He goes down to the wing of his building that has Vanessa, like where they're taking care of Vanessa. And then we cut back to Stiltman has now appeared at the police station because he's been robbed. And so he's like trying to get his super suit back. And then all of a sudden, that's when Matt shows up and he's like, hey, like, I've got evidence for you against, like, Glen Industries. And then he's like, hey, Wilbur, Stiltman. He's like, let's go find your outfit. So Matt's clearly in this, like, weirdly good mood, which is off-putting. And so then it's Foggy and Heather are back. They're out. And she starts to realize, like, that she thinks that Matt's trying to, like, sabotage her father's business and put it down, so she is forced to be married to him. There's, like, a lot going on here with Heather, and it's not great, and Matt's not seeing any of the signs that it's not great. Foggy's trying to keep the peace between both of them. It's not fantastic. So, cut back to Maxine Lavender's office. There's another tap at the window. She once again thinks that it's Daredevil. It is not. It's idiotic Turk in the Stiltman suit. He tussles with her, winds up dropping her, but thankfully, Daredevil is there. He saves her, goes after Stiltman, and is basically like, hey, like, this is how bad you screwed up, Turk, that you screwed up so bad that Wilbur has decided to give me, his arch nemesis, the secret to shutting down the suit. And so he kind of, like, busted up so that the balance isn't working right. And so then Turk, in a fantastic 4-panel clumsiness there, falls and crashes. And so Maxine is saved. Turk is handled. And then we cut back to Murdoch and Nilsson's office, where he shows up. Matt shows up post Daredevil shenanigans. Heather's there. She's obviously upset about what he's doing to go after the business. And she's like kind of exasperated and just like, fine, I'll marry you. And like, fine, I'll marry you is not what you want to hear. So Daredevil is going great. I mean, that book has been firing on all cylinders the entire time that I've been reading it. No notes. Not that I would have any. You know what another book is that I love, and everyone thinks that I'm not being serious, but I mean this with 100% sincerity. Dazzler number 19, Creel and Inhuman Punishment, which was, I mean, come on. She's taken on, The Absorbing Man, so it was just a funny title. Released May 25th, 1982. Written by Danny Fingeroth, pencils by Frank Springer, inks by Vince Colletta, letters by Janice Chang, colors by Don Warfield, and a cover by the wonderful John Romita Jr. and Bob Wyacek. So where we left this one off was Reed had given Allison this like gizmo that kind of amplified her powers. She didn't want to use it because she used it at a concert and it kind of messed people up. But then Absorbing Man showed up because he was like, oh, I'm going to kidnap her and use her as bait to draw the Avengers so I can kill the Avengers. So she used the thing, and that wound up turning him 4 stories tall. So that's where we're at. And they even are nice enough to give you a recap page on the first, which is nice. As opposed to those, as opposed to like the paragraphs we get now or whatever. So, hilarity ensues. Like, Creel is basically like, buzz off, broad. Like, I'm now made of light and power, and this is awesome, and I'm 40 feet tall. Like, I'm not worried about you. I'm heading straight for the Avengers. So Allison is like, zoinks, like she's a Scooby-Doo character. And this part cracks me up because she skates off, and she hits a payphone, and there's something lovely. She calls Jarvis, okay? And Jarvis is like, he thinks it's a prank call. So he winds up, like, hanging up on her. And in these panels, there's just, like, where is she keeping spare change to make phone calls in this outfit? I want to know. And secondly, like today, she'd just have some snazzy communicator. She'd touch her, like somebody would have given her an Avengers ID card or something, or some type of gizmo so that she could call and she'd get a hold of an Avenger, and then an Avenger would pop up. But there is something adorable about her being like, and she's got to find a payphone. She's got to rummage for change. She's got to call Jarvis. Jarvis is like mid-roast making for, Thor or whatever. And he's like, I got to stop this to answer the phone. And he thinks it's some prank kid. I loved it. Thought it was hilarious. Dazzler's great. So Jarvis hangs up on her, which, not cool, Jarvis. You should take those calls seriously. So then she's like, I'm going to call the Fantastic Four. And she gets the answering machine. And she's like, okay, so either they're in the negative zone or they're screening their calls. Either way, this sucks. And so then she's like, well, I'm not that far from the Baxter Building, so I'll just, roller skate down there. Then we cut to Warren Worthington, who's mulling over meeting with Allison's grandmother because he's being a creep, and he's going to try to find her mom. And, he's kind of playing all of that back and lamenting the fact that he's been unsuccessful in finding her mom so far. Then Dazzler winds up at the Fantastic Four's building. And then in the first panel there, Frank Springer is leaving nothing to the imagination. And then she uses her light powers to somehow open the secret elevator, which, comics, I'll allow it. But something tells me that Reed would not let that happen. Then as she's going through the Baxter Building looking for the Fantastic Four, it is noted in like one of the boxes that one of the caption boxes that basically like the weapons array of the Baxter Building recognizes Allison as a friend, and that's why they're not going off. So I thought that was a nice little touch to be like, hey, the computer system recognizes that she's a friend. Could be a scroll, though. You never know. Get it together. So then she winds up, like, finding this little communicator thing, uses it, and she winds up contacting Medusa and Black Bolt. And here's where, blurry-eyed, last night, I learned something that I never... Okay, my introduction to the Inhumans was a 4-part X Factor story, which I talked about a long time ago on the show. I have, last Wednesday, I think I talked about Astonishing Tales and reading Marvel Feature. and some stuff that I didn't have at the time of starting Cornerbacks Classics. And one of those things is there's like a 70s Inhuman story. And I have it, and I was like, oh, I got to bust this out. Familiarize myself with the Inhumans more than I already am. This blew my mind, okay? Buckle up. Because, I mean, maybe everybody else knows this, but I was like a record scratch happened last night. So when Dazzler's talking to Medusa, Medusa's like, she's like, who are you guys? And Medusa's like, I'm Medusa, and with me is my cousin, Black Bolt. And I was like, what? What? I thought Medusa was married to Black Bolt. And then I was like, I gotta Google some stuff, right? And sure enough, they're like distant cousins. Not cool in human royal family. Not cool at all. I was hoping it was one of those, like, you know, in the early issues of Spider-Man, where I think there's one issue where, like, Doc Ock calls him Superman. You know, like, I was just hoping it was one of those things where I was like, I really hope this was just a misstep. And then when I researched it, I was like, no, they just fully skidded into their cousins. Yikes. Anyways, then all of a sudden Lockjaw appears, and Medusa's cousin Black Bolt is there. And so Allison's trying to, like, communicate with him, not realizing that he can't talk. And she's just like, what a brick. So they're off to follow the Absorbing Man to try to stop him. And that's basically when she puts two and two together, that, like, oh, he can't talk. And so Black Bolt goes after Absorbing Man, because she's kind of explaining to him, like, I really don't want to do super heroic stuff. Like, I would prefer not to do this. But she sees Black Bolt's having a tough time with this. And so she finally dives in to help. And by this point, like, the news cameras have caught on that this is going on. And so old Ken Barnett, her beau at the moment, turns on his television, sees this. Warren Worthington has his TV on. He sees this. So Warren's like, well, I'm going to don my super suit and I'm going to fly over there. But then, like an absolute badass, Ken's like, I got no superpowers, just this sweet mustache. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to lend a hand. Which, you know, hats off to you, Ken. Because I wouldn't exactly want to take on an Absorbing Man if the only power I had was a kick-ass mustache. So that's when Black Bolt and Dazzler, who no relation, discover that if they combine their powers, holy smokes, they're definitely going to take down Absorbing Man. And that is exactly what they do. Just in time for Warren to come in and swoop up and grab Dazzler right as Ken shows up. Then there's an awkward moment where the two of them have to shake hands. And it's just like, man, Allison, killing poor Ken. Just kick Warren to the curb. So at this point, you know, Absorbing Man is defeated. So Black Bolt gives Allison a hug and goes to return to his cousin. And then it cuts to Allison having lunch with a friend of hers, Vanessa. And they're talking about her mom. And Vanessa's like an up-and-coming singer too. So she's like, oh, I've got vocal lessons with this lady. And so she goes and she gets the vocal lessons. And she's like, hey, I gotta use the bathroom. And she's like, oh, it's that room right over there. And she gets kind of confused. She's like, did you say right or left? And she opens up a door and she's like, oh no, it can't be. And that's where it ends. So who knows what she saw behind that door. But the next issue, immediately they're like, next issue, the secret of the room. And then, man, Comics in 82. Dazzler faces the macabre menace of Johnny Guitar and Dr. Sax. Their plane will kill you. I know everybody makes this book out to be a huge, like, Dazzler. If you like fun comics and don't take yourself too seriously, Dazzler is something like a 44-issue series that you can absolutely find in dollar bins. And the Frank Springer art is great, especially if you like ladies. I don't know if that dude was like a catalog artist or something, but he's got a thing if you read the book. It's good stuff. You should read it. At least once. Everybody should read Dazzler once, you know? Not every book can be Miller's Daredevil. Last book of May 25th, 1982 that I would have piddled up to pick up off the rack would have been Marvel 2-in-1, number 91, In the Shadow of the Sphinx, written by Tom DeFalco, penciled by the great Ron Wilson, inks by John D'Agostino, letters by Diana Albers, colors by George Rosos, and this cover is done by Ron Wilson and Chick Stone, and there's loads of glare, which pisses off Mr. Akins. I'm sorry. I gotta be able to read the back where I write I keep all the information on the back of my backer boards. This one was super late when I read it last night, so chances are good if you're super familiar with this issue, I'm gonna butcher it. So it opens up with an archaeological dig, and these guys clearly, if you paid attention to the cover and read the title, you've got a pretty good idea of who and what they find. But the archaeological dig just made me realize how much, I love Indiana Jones. So then we cut to it. We've got a prologue page here with Doctor Strange. So he's obviously going to be involved in a little bit. And he has caught wind of something mysterious going on with the Sphinx thing. And then, he sees something happening. What did he call it? I don't think he named the thing that he's looking at. Yeah. Oh, nope. Yeah. Cauldron of the Cosmos. So he's looking in the Cauldron of the Cosmos, which I just, come on. That's cool. And so he sees Thing and a Sphinx. So he's like, I'm going to go talk to the Thing. And then there's this great splash page that I spent way too long looking at last night of the Thing reading while holding up this crazy contraption that Reed has made for him to bench press with one arm. And I was like, man, that is cool. And I'd be hard pressed to say that my favorite rendition of the Thing is slowly becoming Ron Wilson's. Like, I love Byrne's Thing. Obviously, I love Kirby's Thing. But there's really something great about Ron Wilson's Thing. And I love it. So he is then, visited by Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange explains what's going on. And he's like, okay, so you saw me in a cauldron with some pyramids. I'm just going to go and relax after my workout and finishing my book. And I don't want to go to, I'm not fighting some menace in Egypt. So then he goes and he visits Reed, and Reed is talking about some weirdness that is going on in some map that he's looking at with pyramids. And so then Ben's like, oh, crap, Stretch. Like, clearly, I do have to go there. So he hops in one of the old pogo planes and heads off to the pyramids. And, it's a typical Thing type of thing. He gets attacked and then whammoed by the Sphinx, who then chains him up. And you get a brief history of the Sphinx, which I thought was pretty great. And it this covered I got caught up in the show of it all. Because when I was reading this last night, I meant to bust out the Fantastic Four issues where this actually happens, because the Sphinx, it's like a wrestling match in this one issue between the Sphinx and Galactus, and it's fantastic. And I mean, it legitimately opens up with like Galactus doing a suplex on fucking the Sphinx, and it's hilarious and great. And you should definitely read that Fantastic Four issue. They're on the cover. You can easily find it if you look it up, because there is no editor note, because they basically give you the whole shebang of, you know, of all of this happening. And so then obviously Thing realizing that, you know, Sphinx is using this little like amulet to power this machine. Basically what he's been doing is like repeating his life over and over again. And so this like, oh man. So Galactus, so it's like, there's two Sphinx, they're time displaced, and together they set out to work on this brilliant, daring plan, employing the science he had learned throughout the ages and the power of this Ka stone. He began building this restoration ray to reconstruct that which had been scattered among the desert sands by Galactus, which was the initial like gem for the power of the Sphinx. And the ray was placed in the pyramid and remained there for centuries. And so like Sphinx has just been trying to do this over and over again. And every time he fails, he gets to do it all over again. And so that's when the Thing, realizing like he's got to stop this, great panel, bust out of there. And then he takes on the Thing. So it is a great Thing Sphinx fight. And it's an absolute blast. I mean, the Sphinx throws the pogo plane at him, and eventually Thing is sort of able to stop him, messes up the gem just a little bit. He destroyed the restoration ray, but the stone was sort of complete, just damaged. And basically like the Sphinx is like, he basically just jets off in his flying pyramid, and that's the end of the issue. By far not my favorite issue of Marvel 2-in-1, but I mean, it was still fun. Like, it's interesting to like look at these books. There would be no part of me that if I pedaled up to the shop in May 25th, 1982 and read that book, would I feel like I got gypped, like how I feel with certain books that are released today. There's tons of fun stuff in this issue. So even some books where I'm like, not my favorite from that time period, leaps and bounds better than other things. So that is the end of Corner Box Classics for this week with just those 3 books. And I enjoyed all of them. I might say that Dazzler might have been my favorite, mostly just because of the shocking revelation about the fact that Medusa and Black Bolt are cousins. Yikes. All right, I'm going to regroup for a second, and then I'll be back to talk about the show. All right, before we get into the show, this is a really quick aside. I buy Mylars in bulk, 1,000 at once. And normally I get my backing boards kind of same way, but they're usually in packages. This was the first time I just bought the box, like where it's like, you can buy them where they come 100 a pack and they're shrink wrapped and all that type of stuff. But as you can see from the box there is also an option, which is like $15 cheaper, to just get 1,000 backing boards just tossed in a box. Now, I was hoping, this was a gamble, and I don't think I'm going to do it again, because, I'm going to have to focus here, yep. Like, come on, guys. You can't put anything in that box to maybe, like, make sure that the corners of these things don't get dinged. And it's not all of them, it was just a couple, but that was kind of a bummer. All right, so, show today. My buddy Marty puts together the show. He's been doing it for a couple years now, and not close to my, like, it's about a 45-minute drive for me to get this to the show. And there's one that's been going on ever since I was like a kid. That's like 5 minutes from me. And so I tend to hit that show more often than not. I don't see Marty all the time. And see, he and I, it's funny because a lot of the vendors have gotten to know, obviously him, because he's the one who pushed the show, but a couple of the vendors have gotten to know me. And it always makes me laugh when they realize, like, they'll see us talking and they'll be like, oh, Sean, how do you know Marty? And I'll be like, I've known Marty for friggin' 30 years because of music. Marty is a bass player, singer, and I actually listened to this on the way to the show. He was in a band called the Smarties, and great song about Gamera on this album. And before that, in the 90s, he was in this band called Pukerama with my old roommate who was in Sponge. He did the artwork for this. Look at this gorgeous, well, there's the band on there, on that 45. Anyways, so Marty's been, part of the music scene forever. And if you ever want to see, if you are familiar with the band Sponge and you know their song Plowed, the music video for that, if you watch that, the kick drum head has a drawing of a dude's face on it. That is our buddy Mario. It was Mario's birthday when that music video was filmed. And so Jim, my old roommate, our buddy, he was bummed that he wasn't going to be home. They were filming the music video and he was going to miss Mario's birthday. So he was like, I'll do something special to make up for the fact that I'm not going to be there for your birthday party. And so he had Marty draw Mario so he could be on the kick drum. So if you watch that music video, see Mario's face. Anyways, so, this is my little music world and my comic world colliding. So occasionally Marty will be like, hey, you coming out to the show? And most of the time I'm like, it's 45 minutes. And like, I don't have a ton of stuff left on the want list, so, I like going to shows because I would rather give some dude in my area the cash than like buying something online and having it shipped to me. And that whole thing, he can kind of haggle for prices, etc., etc. But sometimes I'm just like, man, and it was like terrible weather earlier. It was like raining like crazy. Anyways, point is, I told him the other day that I was going to be there, so I'm going to be there. And there were a couple of the vendors there that I knew had like kept an eye out for some stuff that I was looking for. So, and I'm glad I went. So what I picked up, one of my goals for this year was to because I'm sort of, I would say, slowing down on if all my X-Men stuff is complete. There's no, it's all single issues. That was kind of my goal with the X-Men stuff. And then the first 100 issues of Fantastic Four, I'm not shelling out that cash for those issues if I can just get them in Epic Collections. But there's other books where Epic Collections kind of pop in here and there, and they're nice. But I was like, it'd be cool if certain runs were just, as much as I can get single issues, I would like to. So one of the things that I had in Epic Collection format was the Sensational She-Hulk. And so I was looking at it and I was like, man, that first trade goes for quite a bit online because it's out of print. And I had it and I was like, if I could sell that trade, could it fund that She-Hulk run? And I am happy to say that it did. Sorry about the glare, Mr. Bacons. So I got rid of that, the first two Sensational She-Hulk trades, and managed to get the first 32 issues of that run, which that's a book that has sort of there's one or two of the titles or the covers that I know just because it's kind of cheesy that they go for stupid amounts of money, which is dumb. But it's also a book that, like, doesn't really... This is one of the things that sort of, like, I've noticed about shows. So when I was a kid going to these types of shows, and these are the types of shows where they are, like, legitimately in VFW halls. Like, there's no... you're not getting any slee stacks here. It is just guys selling books, you know, rent a table, throw up some long boxes. But when I was a kid, and this could be maybe because as a kid I just wanted to get everything, but now that I have most of what I want, there's like two types of sellers now that I've noticed. I used to feel like I could go and you'd see like a whole box of Uncanny X-Men or a whole box of Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, and you'd be able to go through there and like fill holes in your run. And now when I go to these shows, it's like there's a guy there that is selling like 50s Golden Age, like all slab, you know, this book is $4,500. Or it's some new whippersnapper who just has like 5 boxes of variant covers. There's like rarely a guy who's just like, hey, here's a collection of books, have at it, they're $3 a piece. There's a couple, and I really appreciate those guys that have stuck that out. But it's a weird, I don't know if this is everywhere, but sort of in our area, that's what these shows sort of become. It's like, there's an old timer who just has keys, like, oh, check out my wall of keys. And, or like a dude that is just like, here's 72 David Nakayama variants. Not knocking either of these dudes. It's just part of the thing that might keep me home from going to these shows, is because it's like, I'm going to go there and, you know. Yeah. So, needless to say, finding 32 issues of the sensational She-Hulk scratched my John Byrne itch and made me a very happy camper. And that was not where it stops. So then I was like, I've kind of had this, like, when I did the room tour, and I was like, man, everything I have hanging up down here is X-Men, because I put the room together when I was in my angry that they had canceled the Fantastic Four, and you know, just, you know, kind of not into the rest of the Marvel Universe at that point, because I was just mad. So I was like, oh, I should find some fun covers that I like, that I can, you know, that I have in collected editions, you know, but if I can find them inexpensive enough for me, then I'd be happy to get them. And so one of my buddies, actually the guy who, these were purchased from the guy who actually bought the cousin collection that the cousin that I found when I was reading the letters page in that Avengers 164. I think there's a video about it where I read an old letters page during my Cornerbox Classics and realized that it was a cousin, reached out to him, and he was like, oh yeah, we're cousins through marriage. Come on up and take a look at my collection and pick out what you want and help me sell the rest. And so that's what I did. And so then I was talking to him today. He was telling me that some of those books have done very well for him, which I am happy about. And I'm happy to report that I assume that everyone watches every single video that I put out because I'm into continuity. And so this won't make any sense if you do. But last week I talked about some Astonishing Tales that were from that collection. And 4 of those Astonishing Tales that I was going to use to trade for some of this stuff here, I wound up changing my mind and was like, those would be better shipped off to a new home where I hope they are enjoyed. And I think the story of them going from this tiny little village, being kept in a barn for 60 years, and then finding themselves in Scotland is pretty cool. Anyways, I grabbed this beauty of Avengers number 100 because I don't like, that cover's awesome. So many kick-ass Avengers. It's super bright. It's a really good looking cover. And so I was like, this wall and that wall are blue, but if you watch the tour, that wall and that wall are yellow, because I was going for the gold and blue X-Men feel. But all my Avengers books are kind of over there on the blue wall. So I was like, man, that would really look great hanging there buy the Avengers stuff. So that's where that's going. And then I was like, well, I want a really good, like, I need a really good old... I've got some Kirby Fantastic Four, but I was like, I don't have a good representation of Doctor Doom. And so then I saw this cover, and I was like, that needs to be hanging in the room too. That looks great. So I am looking forward to rereading these again in the actual issues, because, like, obviously I have them in trades, but it's pretty exciting to have them in the issues. And now all the rest are out of their bags and boards. So Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. Probably the first 180 issues of that in my collection are, I will have a smattering of issues here and there, but otherwise that one is full-on epic collection, and I have no plans of trying to Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Amazing Spider-Man, first 100 or so issues, first 100 of Fantastic Four, first 100 of Avengers for sure, and I think like 100 and something of Amazing Spider-Man are all epic collections. And I have no want or plan to try to fill out those runs. That is, I got a family. I am not. Spider-Man books are crazy expensive. It's dumb. So, there's 2 books that I have. So basically from like 180 to the present, I have Spider-Man in single issues. This is complete runs of Amazing, Web of, Spectacular, etc., etc. But there are 3 books that elude me. So, 252, I do not own in single issues. My mother got me a trade of that when I was a kid, and I love it. And that's great enough for me. It has a personal connection. But I was like, man, if I can ever find the other issues that are in that trade, I could pick those up if they were inexpensive enough. And I don't want the books falling apart, but I do not need 9.6s, 8. Like, I can have, like, I'll give you a perfect example. In a book, well, you'll see. Okay, so I was able to get 253, 254, 255, 256, 257, and 258, which means that the only issue from that trade that I don't have the single issue copy of is 252. So I was pretty excited about that. I was like, oh, hey, cool. And even if I did eventually one day get number 252, it'd have to be a sweetheart of a deal. And I would always keep that trade because it was a gift from my late mother and, you know, means too much to me. So then, after that trade, which is not an epic collection, after that, there are 2 epic collections, and you can already guess what they are. First one is like 298 through 310. It's when McFarlane starts drawing, and those books are crazy, stupid, expensive. So, but I was like, if I can find copies of certain ones of them, I will absolutely, like, get rid of those trades. If I can find those. Am I going to be able to find 298, 299, 300, 301? Probably not. But look at this banged up. You can see that's number 308. And this is what I mean. Like, that's got a big crease in it. That would bum other people out. It's got a bunch of spine ticks. I don't care because it is complete and I can read it and I can be like, and it smells like musty old newsprint and I love it. So that I was jazzed about. So I got 308, 309, and 310, which means 298 through 307 are the only ones that I don't have the single issues of in that run. And then the next trade that I would be like missing some from is like the very next one, because it's still the McFarlane run, which seems to be crazy, ridiculous, expensive. So I was missing 315, 316, and 317 out of that. I have every other issue. And so today I was able to find 315 for much less than I've seen it online. And the same goes for 317. So if I ever stumble upon a sweetly priced 316, I suppose I could part with that trade. And then I'd just be down to 2. And that's success. So that's sort of where, this is what I mean when I'm like, it's weird because there's not anything where I'm like, oh, I have to go out and find this, because most of it is just like, okay, I have that in a trade, so technically I have it, I can read it. If I stumble across it for the right price, fine, but I'm not like out there like, I have to get this to complete the collection. So speaking of that, I think with this month, June of 82 in Cornerbacks Classics, I'll be pulling Hulk in from now until the end of Peter David's run. And so that is also like mostly single issues, a couple of epic collections, and one of them obviously is the first epic collection of Peter David's run, because again, it's Todd McFarlane, and I wasn't collecting Spider-Man or Hulk at that time, so I missed the boat on those issues. And so I was able to find like a couple issues of that first epic collection today for, you know, a couple bucks. So I was happy about that. Because like I said, I'm not planning on breaking the bank I have the stories complete. But if I like stumble across, you know, $3, $4, $5 copies, but I'm not paying any more than like 10 for something that I already have in a trade if I really, 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 really want it. And so then the rest is all, these were all, you know, dollar books, or I think it was like, you know, one of those like, these are $1 each, or you can get 10 for 15, something like that. I have a couple early 100 issues of a book that has eluded like my radar and isn't in Cornerbacks Classics, is Power Man and Iron Fist. And there was kind of this like short little brief, like 108, 19, 110, 111, 112, 113, and 114 were all in the, you know, lump these all together and it'll be like $10 with the rest of the stuff that I got. And so I was like, hey, that year is, and I already have like 105, 106, 107. So I was like, well, this gives me quite a few issues of Power Man and Iron Fist to see like, do I like this? Would I want to, like, considering the fact that there's not a ton that I like go to the store for, you know, back issue wise or anything, like, hey, would I be interested in, you know, we're always trying to collect something. So is Power Man and Iron Fist going to be the next thing? We shall see. I have all of Byrne's Spider-Man in trades because I wasn't collecting Spider-Man at the time. And then I saw this chapter 1, number 0, and I was like, well, it's John Byrne. I'll check it out. And then I have the first issue of Spider-Man 2099 number 1. And so there was issue 2 and 3. And I think this one, yeah, concluding the origin of Spider-Man 2099 was number 3. So I was like, well, I'll at least get the origin. I read X-Men 2099, but I didn't read any other 2099 books at the time. So those are the comic books that I picked up. So like I said, it was a lot of stuff where I was like, I already have most of this. I already have pretty much all of it in trade, but I was able to, hopefully soon, with the She-Hulk stuff, I was able to cycle out some trades, and that was actually kind of came out ahead with how pricey those epic collections are. And then with the Spider-Man stuff, I was just like, yeah, I can swing that. So then there was a gal there who was doing these, and she was making these like cool 3D printed corner boxes, and the show's called Corner Box Classics. So I was like, oh man, I gotta find somewhere to put that. I thought that was pretty cool. So that was it. Yeah, so that was the show. It was a good time. I had fun with it. I found a bunch of stuff that I'm really happy to have in single issues, because like I said, it sounds silly. Trades were a great thing to be like, okay, I've finished this run and I can actually read the story. But I do really, really, I really love the feel of comics over trades. I love the colors more. Like, I mean, the covers in this issue of Spider-Man, in this newsprint, is so much better to me than the Epic collections are great. I love the format. I love that they include like annuals and one-off trades, or like Marvel fanfare issues that kind of like, the format is great. And I know there are people out there that their whole collection is Epic collection. It looks great on the shelves. I know there are plenty of people, because I have sold a bunch of them as I've kind of done this like replace if I can find single issues, who are thrilled to get copies of them, and that's awesome. It's just I am a single issue dude. I like reading letters pages. I like seeing old advertisements. It's all part of it. I don't need to justify this to anybody. I do what I want. All right. So, show was a success. Corner Box Classics was a success. I'm gonna have to bust out that Inhumans and get to this the bottom of this. I mean, it's still trying to wrap my head around. Why would Stan Lee do that? Okay, anyways, yeah, show was good. Corner Box Classics were good, and we will be back on Wednesday. Fingers crossed the weather is good for a bike ride up to the shop, and then it is back for another Corner Box Classics, and we're now in June of 1982. How exciting is that? So yeah, so let me know what you think about any of those books if you read them, Corner Box Classics wise. Let me know what you think about what I picked up from the show. If you think I'm crazy for already having them in trades and then selling off the trades and using that to buy the singles. I don't know. Just, what do you prefer? What's your preferred format? Let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that type of stuff. And thanks for taking this ride with us.